So welcome, 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 our brilliant and beloved colleague, Sarah. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled, without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders, community stalwarts, whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So as always, Sarah, I just really want to hear from you in terms of your background and what you'd like to share about yourself with our listeners and viewers.
I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you, Victor, for this time. I'm really grateful to be doing this work in the world. Just in terms of my own background, I'm Toronto born, Vancouver raised. I'm a city kid and basically discovered ecological agriculture in my 20s, left the city, started farming. But it all tied in for me into social justice. So social justice is how I got to food and farming. I come from a Eastern European Jewish background, and my grandparents fought for things like public health care, education, human rights, environmentalism, those types of things in the 30s, 40s, and 50s in Ontario. So I always kind of grew up with the sense that my role in the world was to make the world a better place. And after university in 2003, I went to the World Social Forum in Brazil. And it was that moment that I just really got turned on to farming and agriculture, learning about the landless workers movement there, also meeting a Canadian farmer named Percy Schmeiser, who was in one of the, I think, first landmark litigation cases against Monsanto for GMO contamination. And I really woke up to the idea that food systems are a way to have like applied activism to actually do something physical, tangible, tactile in the world that is basically for food systems that we've had for thousands of years that people have lost through industrialization over the last several decades, displacement, diaspora, lands being stolen, all the different pieces. And so that's really, for me personally, like my social justice ethics are what brought me into doing food systems work here on Turtle Island in this place that is colonially called Canada.
That's an incredible journey. Thank you so much for your candor and authenticity and sharing your background with us. It's truly inspiring. And a perfect segue to my next question. What's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at nights?
What's keeping me up at night is the stress of running a organization that's doubled over the last couple of years. We've now gone from about a dozen people to 25, and our budgets have significantly increased. So I think just workplace stress is keeping me up at night. I try to like keep a good schedule, go to bed at the same time, exercise, eat healthy, all that kind of stuff, and try and manage myself and being in the work environment with as much emotional intelligence as possible. What inspires me right now is Indigenous food sovereignty. The work of people like Tea Creek Farm in Kitwanga, who are like basically leading and creating change and inspiring this piece around, like, at the heart of food sovereignty is Indigenous food sovereignty, and also at the heart, I think, of social justice in terms of this place where I live and occupy. So those are my inspirations. At the most basic level, too, it's just spring. It's just that time of the year where things are getting planted and farmers are working in their greenhouses, and the earth is going into its next growth cycle here.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
There are so many challenges and barriers. Our mission is to support the next generation to grow food and farm and find some form of viability. And where I am geographically located in southern British Columbia, we have absolute market failure for agriculture where the cost of land exceeds what a farmer can earn farming it. So there's massive equity issues for new generations coming in that want to farm land. We run something called the BC Land Matching Program, which helps to connect people with land to people looking for land, and we help with leases. Leases doesn't provide a kind of permanent land access solution for new generations that want to grow food and farm. But really it's our most available strategy for new generation farmers, working to get land into kind of permanent holdings, accessible holdings for community, whereby it can be farmed in perpetuity. That's another level of systems change work. Young Agrarians runs 5 different programs and projects currently. So we have a number of different things that we're doing in that new farmer journey space. But the main issues for people are access to land, access to capital, and access to knowledge transfer. And so it's one of the main pieces that we support with is that community building aspect to help farmers find other farmers, people growing food, find other people growing food, try and do some culture jamming. We do these introduction circles to make sure that everybody knows who's who, coming from where, needs and opportunities. And just to provide that kind of support network for people getting into a really, I would say, a fairly complicated space to exist in. Land-based work is really hard. It's really physically demanding. Trying to make food systems work with capitalism and do production economics and make your farming viable and, deal with how capital interfaces with the land. There's so many different layers of challenges in there. So also where I am, there's massive issues right now with water licensing. The Water Licensing Act over the last couple of years has really gotten like to the point where it's really hit the ground, and a lot of landholders have been forced into water licensing. And with the new kind of like, I think drought here, I kind of laugh at it when I think about drought in other parts of the world and how we talk about drought here, which is seasonal and limited to, maybe 4 to 8 months during the growing season. Also, depending if you're on the Okanagan or Vancouver Island or in the north. But I would say that water access issues are increasingly becoming a significant problem for farmers. And, like if July, August are people's peak season where they're doing the most significant amount of sales and stuff like that, it's a terrible time to have bad drought conditions or literally just run out of water on farms. So I'm not sure if I summarized that up so great, but really for new and young people, it's hard to get into farming because of the cost of land.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I can imagine. And thank you so much for your candor. And just sharing some of those issues. Like we do a lot of work in the agroecology space and just social innovation in general. And we connect with a lot of farmers in the Black communities. And I think that a lot of times folks don't recognize how important food sovereignty and food security is, but how taxing and daunting, and how it's a generational struggle since time immemorial. Like my wife is a horticulturalist and a farmer, and made me a farmer through some of her work, because when you're married to a farmer, you automatically become one by lifting and doing and learning and forced reading. But I really think that the work that you're doing is truly inspiring and remarkable, because if someone isn't doing the work, of raising up the next generation of farmers, we're in trouble as a species. So once again, I give thanks for all that you're doing for so many. So my next question, and it's my second last question, what is your ultimate goal and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
Yeah, I think what you've just identified, like if we don't raise up the next generation, we're in trouble. Canada is in like rapid rundown in terms of farming population, and you can see it on the Census of Agriculture, which gets published every 5 years. So the last big jump from 2016 to 2021 took us from 1.7% of the population farming in Canada to 1.3. And so we're on like rapid rundown. I think the numbers were less than 25,000 young farm operators, 35 and younger. And so you have an aging farming population, and then you have decreasing numbers of people able to enter, and those who enter have high failure rates. So when we're thinking about the future, we're using words like farm renewal, the need to invest in farm renewal, because if we're not investing in the next generation and really putting like programming and structural supports in place, then how do we expect people to enter in and replace farming populations? And the neoliberal policy directive has been agri-tech, automation. We see increasing corporate consolidation of the land base and ownership. And then when you're thinking about like new generations coming in, they often have to start small. They don't come in with millions of dollars of equity to be able to get into corporate agriculture. They're usually people who are really concerned about climate change, and they have to start in scale appropriate ways. And so a lot of the values that have been in the kind of government system for decades at this stage, government system, corporate agriculture system, are about consolidation and growth and getting bigger. But that really means that new generations have a hard time like digging in, planting in, and being able to grow these next generation farms. And with the pandemic, we saw that we are really dependent on short supply chain. Long supply chain doesn't create any emergency preparedness for us. It makes us vulnerable. And if we want full automation of the landscape, right, if we're not focused on putting the ecology back into the landscape, we're also not adapting to climate change, let alone this kind of like big concept that a lot of people talk about, which is mitigation through agricultural practices, which arguably at this stage, all we can do is adapt. So really, if there's a goal, if there's an idea that we get somewhere, it's really about farm renewal. But with climate change underway and with economics where they're at, like really, it's really complicated work to do to be in that new entrant space, to try and create structural change and actual structural supports. And I am continuously inspired by other people out there that are working on different pieces of the food system. And I think that, I have some hope for the future. But yeah, it's a big problem, and it's a key one for us, for our food systems for the future.
Indeed. I wish my wife was home to just listen in on the conversation. She'd be clapping during this whole thing. When you talk about just the loss of biodiversity and ecology, I'm currently in the midst of a course my wife took by Dr. Elaine from Soil Food Web. It's an incredible course. It's so comprehensive. There's like 60 classes. So I'm a horrible student. You know what I mean? But I'm saying all this to say that what you're talking about is so important, because not only did COVID, there's been so many crises that have showed us how short our supply chain is. And more importantly, we recognize that, once again, as you mentioned, structural and systemic transformation is so incremental that if we don't start now, we're in trouble. So when you think about climate action, and climate change, new almost timelines being pushed to 2050, as opposed to the real timeline that's needed, which is 2030. It's the same thing when it comes to food sovereignty and food security. We need to build rejuvenative soil systems, food systems, and recognize that we're part of an ecosystem, not just, like the human race that owns the planet, which is the most absurd thing, but we operate in terms of capital markets, almost like we have that thinking that we own and rule and govern the planets, which is so, like, it's almost like the planet's going to humble us as a species to say, like, no, you don't, and we see it happening all around the world. So
All around the world. You see it happening all around the world. Every single thing. I was just talking recently about air travel. There's so much turbulence now, like within the atmosphere, that planes are having to go higher and higher. And they're now going to apparently start canceling North Atlantic routes in the winter because it's just too dangerous. Every single ecosystem is pushing us along a path of, you got to figure your stuff out. Like, either you're going to reconcile with nature or nature is going to reconcile you.
indeed, that is the bar of the century right there. Reconcile with nature, or nature will reconcile you. In the words of my illustrious colleague Sara Dent. No, I so appreciate you, fam. So my last question: do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
I think just, for people who are like interested, like, just get involved. Like, it's going to take all of us working on the food system, being part of the food system. I loved hearing about your learning journey and your wife and the courses that you're taking. It's that basic piece around people getting like inspired by it and learning about it and getting involved with ecology and growing it at any scale that people can grow at. And meeting your local farmers and talking to them and finding out, like, hey, what's up? Like, what's happening with you and how do I support you? And it's not just the farmers, it's all the value adders out there, the people who are working with really high quality primary ecologically grown product and transforming it into value add, and also working in the food system to, like, do those pieces. So, the food system is all of us. It's like we're all eaters and we're all participants. And the more people are, like, tuning in and getting involved and learning, like, I think that's really what is so important today. And none of our work, like, none of our farmers, like, we need community, we need the public engaged, we need people involved. That's how we build a local, resilient, hopefully climate adapted food system. And get involved with the there's a fight, Ontario, they're trying to preserve farmland that the government wants to turn into airports. Like, get involved with, like, whatever the things are, whether it's like food share or there's just so many exciting things that are happening and people that are resisting and growing change. And I think just having more people involved and learning is really where the shift is going to happen.
Shay, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, family, for your remarkable visionary leadership, your solidarity, your tenacity, resilience, and all the authenticity that you bring to this work. And as always, at Setsi, we close this conversation, this interview, the way it began, by giving thanks, as always, and acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled, our compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Sara, I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.